How do we value our companies? Oh, okay. How do we value our companies? Because from the last thing he said, some people, you mentioned being a 100% owner for, let me just make it easier, 100% owner of a 0% company, because right now you're not even making profit, right? You have debt. Otherwise, you could even be a 10% owner of even $1 million company. How can you explain in basic words how you calculate the valuation of your company, right? You know how we do in Dragon's Den. Can someone, maybe Mr. Jansen, since you're a finance lover?
Right. There are a number of ways you can do that, and I would actually suggest that Mike and Nia are probably more adept at it than I am. But what I would say is the easiest way to do it, what most investors would like to do is to focus more on what we call your net value. So basically, we will look at the business you've been doing, how much money you've brought in, and we'll look at your liabilities. We'll do an offset and say this is your net book value. And this is where we want to start the conversation. If you are an entrepreneur, on the other hand, your focus is the future. So you are saying, okay, my net book value is X, but if I go through this plan I'm talking about, that net book value in the future might be worth 20 times that. I want to start the conversation from there. Now, what you arrive at is more of a negotiation. It's more about understanding. Your focus has to be a lot more on what you need and how you can then transition from where you are to that 20-year plan location that you are looking at. So it's a negotiation between parties. The entrepreneur wants to start with a high number. Investor wants to start with a lower number. The tranches Kelvin was talking about, it's a good thing actually, because it keeps you on your toes. The idea is, I'll give you X amount, demonstrate that you can get from point A to point B. When you get to point B, I'm going to give you a little bit more and a little bit more. So it also helps the investor, but it's a negotiation, how you arrive at the valuation. There are the standard ways of doing it in terms of your book value, and then there are also the discounted cash flows that you can use. So I tried very hard not to bring in discounted cash flow. I couldn't get away with it.
I guess a few people got it. Do we have any questions? I have so many. Oh, we have one back there. Do we have extra mics? There's a path. I have to say your questions for you.
Hello. Hi. Please.
Please introduce yourself, your company maybe, if you are.
My name is Chip Hagen. I'm Global Development Director of Collect and Recycle Ecologically, UK based, and Ghana NGO. Every time you are talking, I see a sign about Dell. What is your link with Dell?
Sorry, is that question to me? Right, okay. I actually currently don't have any link to Dell, except that I use the equipment from time to time. I believe it is the brand of the laptop.
It's a Dell laptop.
Yes. Right. In Ghana, we have not done a very good job at recycling. Indeed, we have become, for the large part, a destination for a lot of the technology junk. I believe that there are one or two efforts that are in place now. There are one or two recycling plants that are being set up. But for the vast majority, for my line of business, when we work with a product and it comes to the end of life, it's either that we are donating it if it still has use. Okay? Sorry. Right. We typically will donate it. I can't recall we ever having to actually get rid of items. There's always need in some school or some institution. So I know we've made donations to the police, we've made donations to some of the secondary schools, but that's typically how we get rid of a lot of the infrastructure that we use. Right.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Next question, and please, women, I'll be coming next to a woman. Please do hold the mic close.
Thank you. I'm Samuel. I'm a startup. I have a very brilliant idea, and my company into the future is Escargot Ghana. I hope somebody knows what I'm talking about. I associate my capital. We have identified that there's a problem. We all know that financing is a challenge. We have banks, but not development partners to help. What are we going to do? Are we going to leave that for long? Some other countries have banks who venture into businesses. If you present your idea, they buy into it. Why not we encourage our banks here, instead of the credit officers that they have, who, when you go to them, there are two types. One will say, you need this, you need that, you need that. Because of that, you don't have, especially audited financial statements, 3 years of it. For a startup, you don't have because of that. You don't even show up at all. There are others who will encourage you, you go for all what you need, especially if you are a worker. And then at the end, it goes to the credit officer and they say, they cannot give you any finance. Why can't they at least look at what you have on paper and see if it can really help you to start up a little? And then they'll continue and then get something out of it. So that they practice what is the real meaning of venture capital. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There surely is a way out of this. But unfortunately, that comes at a level that I don't have influence. It must happen at a level of institutions that have access to long-term funds. And these are called pension funds. Pension funds are the sources of funding for a lot of companies in the West. Typically, what should have happened in a country like ours is the government should have set up serious development finance institutions that access funds from these pension funds, and they would in turn invest in viable projects. Don't go to the banks. They are not set up with long-term funding, so they are technically not in a position to support you. If there were institutions that can access funds from, say, SMEs and other pension houses, then it would have been possible for these institutions to invest in your idea and other ideas that we have here. But if that does not exist, I'm afraid. Now, SNIT really, I don't know.
Thank you so much. We have a female here. Thank you for the gender.
Please, my question is to the IT guy. I want to know more about this computer networking, and then the job opportunities if you are into this computer networking. Like, I want to know more about that and.
Jansen or Kelvin?
Jansen.
Mr. Jansen. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
The question's to me?
Yes, please.
Right, okay. The IT industry is actually growing very, very rapidly. And it's, a lot of the time, people limit it to local area networking. It's much more than that. It's everything from telecommunications through to building applications, mobile apps. Mobile apps is a particularly interesting area, and I know a lot of the companies in my industry are recruiting and are growing. I'll throw some numbers at you. About 11 years ago, when I got into value-added services, the value of an SMS was zero. How many of you know SMS is a byproduct of telephony? It has no intrinsic cost or value, right? We decided, well, if we can add some content or something that you want, you'll be prepared to pay much more than you normally would pay for a piece of content. So it might be that I do a deal with someone who has music and I'm going to put it on there, or I'm going to give you alerts. You know, when you go to Mike's bank, you take cash, I'll let you know how much is left. Those are things that you are prepared to pay a bit of money for. That industry has gone from tens of thousands, a value of tens of thousands, to now contributing about 10, 12% of what the mobile network operators make. Now, that gives you an idea of the scale of the IT industry. And if you're asking, is there opportunity there? There's loads of opportunity. And it's one of the areas where you can actually get pretty quick access to financing, and you can become a success if you have a good and compelling idea. So, push hard, get in there.
How fast is mobile business growing in, let's say, Ghana?
Tremendously fast.
Percentage.
I mean, I have seen companies that have started up, say, in the last 5 years, that are now doing turnovers of about $5-6 million a year. I know we should be talking in cedis, but it's the nature of the industry. But the growth is phenomenal, and we don't see it bottoming out for quite a while. I know we report numbers of mobile penetration, for example. It's over 100%. I don't know how many people in this room actually have only one mobile phone. Raise your hand if you have only one. Wow, I'm shocked. If you came from the early days, you have at least 2 or 3, because it's a dual SIM phone. Good point. Now, because of that, even though we are reporting over 100% penetration, you will find that when you look at the individual level, there's still about 20-30% of the market that yet has not accessed mobile telephony. So there's still room for growth. And the things that we are using this technology for, it grows every day. Today, you can now, with your smartphone, control your home. You can decide to turn on your air conditioning before you get there, or your lights. You can decide that you've traveled, but the boys in the area are notorious. So 6 o'clock, you program that the light should come on. 5 o'clock in the morning, light should go off. Every so many hours, a radio. You can do all of that with the technology. So there's a lot of room for growth. And it's a melting pot for innovation.
My name is Christabel Afrani. My question also goes to Mr. Yamson. Yeah, you mentioned that every starter needs a mentor. And you realize that, especially in Ghana, for me, I have tried approaching a few women who are doing well in various businesses to provide me some kind of coaching and mentoring. But you tell them what your ideas are, they're excited about it, they give you their number, their email address, and then you follow up with an email which you never get a reply. So how do you find a good mentor, and how do you build this relationship with him or her? Thank you.
Right. Okay, so there are a number of ways. I can tell you that I get approached about 18 or 20 times every year by people who ask me to mentor them. The vast majority come through LinkedIn. And I have a very simple way of sorting out who I should actually mentor. I get the first email and I say, wonderful to meet you. Tell me about your goals. Tell me where you want to get to. Tell me what you think, which areas you believe you need mentoring in. 90% of people never respond. They like the idea of saying, you are my mentor, but they're actually not seeking any mentoring from you. Now, I do have a group of young people that I personally mentor, and I do active mentoring. I don't know how to do I come, I give you a lecture, and I walk away, see you in 6 months. I don't do that. When someone comes to me with an idea and say, I want you to mentor me, the first thing I say, tell me where you want to get to. I will engage you in a 2-hour conversation, understand where the gaps in your knowledge are. The next thing I'll do is to test your pulse and say, okay, you want me to mentor you, this is a 2-year friendship, and it comes at a cost of 10% of your equity. Another 10% will walk out the door. But for those that remain, sometimes it's a 5-year journey. Sometimes it's a 10-year journey. I can tell you companies that we started with in this way, and today we have maybe a 30% position with them. Because somewhere down the line, you've come to understand the person's business, you've come to understand what it is that they offer, and you're actually prepared to invest a lot more of yourself, including your cash, in it. Cash is cheap, time is very expensive. So for someone to mentor you, they've got to believe in what it is that you want to achieve. So 1 or 2 people may have turned you down. Keep looking. You need to assess yourself, understand what you need, and you have to be able to pitch yourself. Finding a mentor is no different from finding funding. You have to interest me for me to mentor you. If I don't care about what you are doing, if I don't care about what you can achieve, I am not going to mentor you. So you have to literally think of yourself as a product and sell yourself to me. That's the only way you're going to find a mentor.
Thank you so much. We have another question here.
My name is Adam. I work with ZipNet. I have 2 questions for Mr. Mike. The first one is...
No, sir.
Okay, I've realized Beige Capital last year did really well with they had their results out, and then they made mention of the fact that they did well. The question I want to ask you is, in the midst of this power situation and our local currency as it is, how Beige has been able to have reliable systems to withstand all this kind of turbulences. And then the second question is, I've heard you on one interview before, and you had a piece on why you think graduates don't need a job to be able to find out what they need to do with their lives. You made mention of the fact that entrepreneurship or doing something out of school whilst in school is not as complex as we make it seem sometimes. And I think you used your own personal example to share some light on that. I don't know whether you remember all of that, but anything you can tell me on that.
I'm also
thank you
going to pass the phone to Kelvin, who could answer the graduate one after you.
very much. We survived last year. That's Beige Capital survived last year. We're happy about our performance. I think the industry itself went through a great deal of turbulence. But what made us survive, I attribute simply to the year-end position we had in 2014. We had a good 2014, so we were positioned in a way that the shocks that came in 2015 hit us, but we were in a stronger position at the beginning of the year. Largely, I would say what has accounted for it. The other bit you're talking about, I don't quite remember. So if you can help me, I don't quite remember.
Perhaps Kelvin, who is closer to the graduate age, could maybe answer the graduate question. Why graduate? Why graduates don't need to work to understand what they do?
Well, I think I have once made a statement on a platform where I said sometimes we rush into entrepreneurship because we don't allow ourselves to go to apprenticeship. Right? I'm sure that's the statement you're talking about. Yes, we preach entrepreneurship all the time, but I also like to stress on intrapreneurship, which is where you lend yourself to be tutored. You work with a lot of people and learn the art of even how to conduct a business. If you don't lend yourself to the process of entrepreneurship, you'd get out of school and think, I must start a business, I must do this, I must do that, and you don't even know how to organize an office. And that's a fundamental weakness and why a lot of us are also unable to do pitches. I served a great deal of my time with Deloitte and Touche and worked with other NGOs. So by the time I walked out and wanted to do full-time entrepreneurship, setting up an office, documenting my business, standards that an office should have, office procedures, they come like that because I've schooled myself. Because if you don't have that and you start your entrepreneurship career straight from school, you do not know how to do a lot of things. And what an investor also likes to see is a history. How would you be able to document the history to be able to tell where you're coming from and what successes you have achieved? You will be able to properly document your history if you have an idea how to put it together. If you've not served under anyone, how are you able to do that? So yes, entrepreneurship is a fine thing, but entrepreneurship is very important.
Anything to add, Kelvin?
I wanted to touch base on the valuation aspect because sometimes it's little different from the way the other businesses calculate the valuation. So, and this information you can find online. Usually investors would ask you for your pre-valuation. So, if you've raised funding before, in our case we raised $90,000. That is an amount to start with. So we say, okay, our X amount is $90,000, and then calculating from the 1.5 years, what have we invested? Do we have any key partnership? If we wanted to pay for those partnership, how much would it cost us? So we add all of those costs to it. If the company was paying us real salary, how much would that be? Because we had to take pay cuts to run the business. So all of those values that we added to the company to grow the company to that stage, becomes the pre-valuation. And then the amount you're asking for is plus the pre-valuation becomes the post-valuation. So in our case, let's just assume that our pre-valuation is was $2 million, right? And then we ask for 500,000 USD. So the post-valuation becomes 2.5. So the simple math is the pre over the post, and then you find a fraction of that. And that fraction is how much the investor is going to take from your company. So practically, Frontier asked us to tell them how much we needed. And then they had a max, they had a cut. So they couldn't invest more than $5 million. So we could have raised more than 500,000. We could have raised 2 million, 3 million. But then if you do the math, you realize that you are giving away too much equity, which wouldn't make too much sense in the beginning. So I guess that's a basic math that you can find online. Apply if you want to raise funds. Yeah.
So much. And maybe, perhaps maybe you can talk about the amount of equity startups, or let me say interim businesses, pioneers should be looking at. Is 51% decent? Why 51% means that if you have more than 51%, then of course the investors own the business. So what should startups be looking at?
Personally, I don't think there's a magic number. What rather I think is important is very early on, if you can get the founders of the company or the people that are really driving the vision to stay on with the vision for as long as possible, I think that will help in terms of the future growth, at least till it gets to a point where perhaps maybe the venture capitalists are coming in. I think that would be very important. But in terms of a magic number, if I knew it, I would solve a lot of problems. Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Chris Emewulu. My organization is called Stars from All Nations. We help young people to transition from college to career. And I was really impressed by the line of thoughts which you shared, and it was so fascinating when you talked about entrepreneurship in relates to graduating from college and jumping into something. I think that was expressly right, and is some of the things that we need to understand as young people, which is why we'll be having a breakfast meeting focused on that topic, understanding student entrepreneurship. My question is, after a project that we had at Yali, we were having some virtual conversation, and somebody made a case about how the government wants young people to go into entrepreneurship, but there are no such things as bait fund, like some other countries are exploring. So we had this conversation, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm wanting to hear your opinion on this. Is this something that is practicable in this economy to set up a bait fund where young entrepreneurs can go and pull out some money with
zero interest to be able to, run these big ideas that we have. What do you feel about that?
Anyone on the panel?
A beige, what fund is that?
Date fund? What?
Beige fund.
A bait fund.
Bait fund.
Yeah, like a kind of something to attract us that have these ideas to really go into entrepreneurship like you want us to.
It sounds like the development fund.
I think Ishmael will take that question.
Ishmael? Last question.
All right. Mike's baited me into this one, not a problem. Is it a good idea? Yes. But you will also agree that there are different economic realities in different places. In Ghana, there are some funds that are available. They may not be as large as we want. Some of them are grants, some of them are zero interest rated. So I recall a few years ago, there was a lot of noise being made about the SDF. And that's the sort of fund that I believe you're talking about. So the short answer is yes, it's a good idea, and yes, some of them exist. But what I would say is sometimes we assume that starting a business, it's all about the money you can raise. There are loads of ways to get started up. You can get a lot more people around you. If you are not afraid to share in the equity that you have, a lot of the time you can actually get things going without access to a zero interest fund. And truly, if you believe in your idea, I don't think you are going to be that afraid to let a bit of it go. I guess the mistake that a lot of us make is we think we don't want to let too much go too soon. It's a good idea. But the mistake is to say, well, there's some money out there. I want an interest-free loan and an interest-free loan alone. Even if I can raise some money through some other means, that will mean an investor comes in, because that investor is going to make more money than I'm going to make. Big mistake. Don't go there. But I think I'm digressing. Bottom line, the funds are available. They are not as large. There are not as many of them, but some of them are available to us.
Sorry, we have one more question, please.
Good evening. My name is Albert, and my question is to Mr. Sowa. So, on the alternative stock exchange, I know one of the conditions for a sponsoring broker one of the conditions for listing a company is that the sponsoring broker has to guarantee that the float will be successful. That means that at the very minimum, if everything goes wrong, the sponsoring broker has to foot up, say, 25% of the value that was being floated on the market. And in my experience, a lot of these organizations from putting their money in, because some of them might not necessarily believe in the organization, but then one of the constructs of an IPO is to test the market and to test a larger pool of people. So now, instead of pushing to get more people, it's now pitching an idea to a group of small companies or a group of brokers to see whether they indeed believe in you rather than going to a larger market. So my question is, what is your opinion on that clause or that regulation? Do you think it should still be there, or should it be changed to enable more organizations test the market, so then if it goes well, that's negative?
I think it should not be changed. It should stay there. Why? Look at the main stock exchange. It's 25 years old, and we have about 36 listed companies over there. In the 1.5 to 2 years that the alternative exchange has been around, it has about 10 or so. We are looking at the debt ones, which are about 4, and then the equity ones, which are about 5 or 6, within 2 years. I think that it's important for that clause to be there. And because the alternative market is mainly for like SMEs, I don't think the amounts are really huge. You look at the likes of, let's say, Hodds. Hodds is, if you know this brown gold, the cocoa thing, they are the ones that really started it and made it really popular. That offer was fully underwritten by GN Investments, easily. And there have been there are stories behind the other ones that are there. I think that there's potential, and as such, that clause should remain. It should not be taken away.
Thank you so much. We have a few questions from our Twitter handle. I believe Na, will she be mentioning some of the questions?
Yeah, when he talks, I can hear.
If not, okay. If not, I know it's getting late. We thank all our panelists, speakers, presenters for the amazing presentation, for enlightening us on finance or crush. I hope we all enjoyed, right? Could we give them all a round of applause?